have a special guest today with a great story to tell, a powerful story, and we're looking forward to that. So thank you for joining us today in the America's Black Robe Regiment podcast.
Welcome, Bill. How are you doing today? But we have two Bills on today. How is that?
Two Bills. Doing great.
Yeah, this is fantastic. So I know, Pastor Bill Cook, that you have some amazing, information to share as well. And Pastor Bill Dunfee, maybe you can share a little bit about, where you are and what has been going on.
Sure. Well, I'm in Ohio, and a little community called Coshocton, and this is where I was born and raised, and this is where the Lord has planted my wife and I, and we just serve Jesus from this point, and look forward to the opportunities He puts before us. I've pastored now for 30-some years, 32, 33 years.
Wow.
My son co-pastors currently with me, and I also have a construction business. We're home builders, and and a family farm. So we're very, very busy, and always looking forward to the opportunities that the Lord puts in front of us. So I'm about 65 miles northeast of Columbus is where I'm located at.
Oh, that's awesome. So, Bill, how did the two of you meet?
Well, I met Reverend Bill down in Knoxville at the Patriot Church. We were doing an event together, Stand Up for Liberty, freedom event, and that's where we met. And kindred spirits came together, and the Lord is opening doors. And we have opportunities now to get something going in Ohio.
Praise God. We're looking forward to building things in Ohio, Bill. America's Black Robe Regiment is attempting to establish chapters in every jurisdiction, political jurisdiction in America, and we're well on our way to doing that. And so, Bill I think I'd say, Bill, you're a leader in your jurisdiction out there in Ohio. So, we need guys like you who are in the pulpit and will stand up for truth and righteousness. So, thank you for doing that.
Well, yeah, it's an honor to serve the Lord, and it's an honor to get to meet individuals such as yourself. And the Lord always has a way of bringing us together.
Yes.
I've met some remarkable individuals on the streets and at the very gates of hell. And, those are individuals that, to be honest with you, are the relationships that I truly treasure. And, and it's amazing how the Lord continues to bring us together. Sometimes it's in handcuffs, and other times, it's in reunion or whatever. But He always brings us together.
There was an incredible time down there in Knoxville, Bill. We thought God really moved mightily down there. But January 6th, let's look back to that date. There's a lot to tell about that. You've had a lot of experiences associated with that, and I could read your bio here. I don't want to do that. I just want to give you a chance to tell the rest of the story to the people that are listening to this podcast, because I think it's very powerful. You told it down in Tennessee, and I'm looking forward to hearing it again.
Yeah, sure. Well, the reason I was at January 6th is simply because of the fact that the Lord called me through His Spirit to go. And, I believe that as a pastor that I have a responsibility to defend liberty and freedom, to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ. And, and I also believe that as a shepherd, I have a responsibility to lead the sheep out.
Amen.
To be a shepherd that leads from the front and not from the tail end. And so whenever I heard that there was going to be a Stop the Steal rally, immediately the Spirit of the Lord spoke into my spirit that this is something that I need to go and to do, and not to hear President Trump speak again, but literally to go to the Capitol and to address our legislators, our politicians, in light of and in reference to the many years of tyranny and lawlessness that we've been living under. And then also, the Stop the Steal, the stolen election and so on. So I just seen it as an opportunity to interact with my legislators. And there was many of us that went. I think about 14 from a church went. And a lot of us carpooled together. It's about 120 of us from Ohio that carpooled together. But we got separated along the way. Others had, wanted to go down and to hear President Trump speak and so on. And so I just went straight to the Capitol and expecting to get to the steps of the Capitol to preach and to pray and to admonish and to encourage and interact with our legislators. It's not the first time I was at the Capitol, and I've always had access to the Capitol steps, not the building, but to the steps. And so when I got there, discovered that we were barricaded from being able to get there. That made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. I thought that we had a First Amendment right to a redress of grievances. I thought it was our house. I heard a lot of people saying, this is our house. The fact of the matter is I stated it numerous times, this is our house. And so anyway, when we got there, they had us barricaded, bicycle racks up. And, all the while there's a plan, a plot, a scheme that's going on that, unfortunately, I didn't see it. I didn't expect it. I, maybe a little naive or what on my part, but the bottom line is this, is that I only have one thing on my mind, and that was to do what the Lord called me to do. So when we got there and we couldn't get there, there was nobody where I was at. The few that went with us, about 15 that went with me. There was another group that was there that was just kind of staged what turns out to be the east front of the Capitol, not the main front, the west side. And, and so I'm a preacher. I'm a street preacher. That's what I do. I'm preaching the pulpit, and I preach on at anywhere it is that there's a need, whether it's at homosexual parades or abortion mills or strip clubs or mosques or wherever it is, wherever it is the Lord guides. And so I went to preaching and, trying to get the message out. But I didn't even go with a bullhorn. People said that, well, you dummy, you should have, you wore your business logo on your shoulder. If you hadn't done that, they would have never found you. I'm like, I didn't go to break any laws. I didn't go to be incognito. I went to be as a messenger. But there was that group that was there, and I borrowed their bullhorn and just started preaching. I preached for 4 hours. From about 10 o'clock to about, I would say it was probably 2 o'clock-ish or something like that. And you have to forgive me because all the timelines aren't fresh in my head without my notes and so on and so forth. But anyway, I just went to preaching and admonishing and encouraging and praying and rebuking and so on and so forth. And, trying to convey to the Capitol Police and such and so forth that that it's our house and that we should have access to our steps and so on and so forth. And they were totally dismissive. They were just they were there. They weren't concerned about anything. They weren't frightened about anything. They weren't fretting over anything. And so for the first couple hours, there was very few people. I would say maybe prior to President Trump finishing his speech, that may have been in the neighborhood of grew to maybe, I don't know, 10,000 or so, that it grew to, scattered on the east side. Around me, there may have been 350, 400 people or something like that. And so anyway, eventually the crowd grew. But one of the things that began to occur, and the message was a simple message, again, exposing the tyranny and, the lawlessness and all the mandates and so on and so forth that we've been forced to live under. And then also there's still an election, and why won't you investigate it? You work for us, legislators, you work for us, you need to listen to us and so on. So anyway, but over the course of time, things began to get a little antsy, and there's some shuffling on the different sides of the Capitol and so on and so forth. And, and by this time the crowd has grown, and so the people, are coming to me with cell phones and showing me what's going on this side, what's going on that side, and that we need to go to the Capitol, we need to go to the Capitol, we need to go to the Capitol, and at this point in time, that for me, even though I wanted to get to the steps of the Capitol, more as a message that we have a right to be there. The Constitution, our First Amendment right to redress of grievances, a light push against tyranny, and so on and so forth. That I had no intentions of moving to the Capitol until as long as the challenge of the certification was going on and stuff. So it was going on, and so I would just kind of narrate what was being conveyed to me. Arizona's being challenged, Pennsylvania's being challenged, and so on. But as it's being challenged, people are getting more and more anxious, and I'm not certain what all was going on the west side, but obviously there was a breaching of the bicycle racks early on, and ultimately that led to the terrorists later on, and then also to the scaffolding, and people were catching sense of that and becoming aware of it. And so anyway, through the course of time, as we're preaching, that the crowd grows and so on, and more people are getting anxious. That there's a moment there where it is that a young lady moved over onto my right side about 60 to 70 feet from me, not real far. And she's known, the FBI identified her, as Megan Paradise, which is an AKA name. And she jumped up on a podium, and she had a bullhorn. And she started preaching, and she started railing. It wasn't preaching. Men, you got to fight for me. Men, you got to defend me. Men, you got to. I'm a girl. I can't fight. I won't have liberty if you don't fight for me, and so on and so forth. And so anyway, there was an instance there where we got into where there was a move at the bicycle rack, and I was taking a break from preaching, but whenever there was the push to the bicycle rack, instinctively I just went forward and I pushed into that bicycle rack. But while I was pushing into the bicycle rack, I had a bullhorn in my hand, and I wasn't pushing aggressively or violently or anything like that. It was just a common push, basically. I was talking to a Lieutenant Warren, I believe is his name. And he just simply said to me, he said, Bill, come on, we can't do this. Well, he didn't call me by name. He just said, come on, we can't do this. We got a job to do. We understand why you're here. We're sympathetic to it, so on and so forth. And, and at the end of the day, we want to go home, and I want you to go home. And I said, I'll tell you what, if you'll get us to the steps, I'll do everything I can do to stop this on this side. And he said, are you serious? We do that? And I said, yeah, and there's video of it. And so I got the bullhorn, and I, got the people's attention, and I had to speak over top of the young lady by the name of Megan. And finally, I got the people's attention, and I said, listen, this officer here is going to get us to the steps. And, he's lying. And I said, no, come on in. And he came in and he dressed us. He said, yes, I'm going to get you to the steps. And that way there, I'm going to talk to my superiors. And I said to the crowd, I said, this way here, nobody gets hurt. There's no one getting harmed or hurt, or there's no arrest or anything like that. We'll just get to the steps. Well, anyway, as he walked away, that he was talking to somebody on his radio. And then it all started up again. This is probably about a 15-minute lapse. And, I'm trying to keep the crowd calm down and everything else. And then ultimately, there was a second breach. And when that breach came, I just automatically went through the bicycle rack. There wasn't any altercation between myself and the Capitol police officer. I went to the bicycle rack. I was one of the first ones through. And when I got to the steps, my mission was the steps. I got to the steps, I turned around and I put my hands in the air, and I said, yeah, okay, we're here, we made it to the steps, and the message is clear that, we want to be heard, and so on and so forth. And but by that time, the crowd had grown so big that nobody was paying any attention to any one person. And so there was a stall at the steps, but eventually, as the crowd grew, there were some actions by the Capitol police officers of pepper spray, flashbangs, and batons and shields that really irritated the crowd, and it began a heave-ho up the steps. And so as we advance up the steps, I get to the Capitol doors, and the Capitol doors, as I get there, somebody says they're locked, so I just turn around and I'm heading back down. I'm heading back down, and for me, mission is accomplished. I came and I've done what the Lord required of me, asked of me to do, and I preached and prayed, admonished, encouraged, and challenged, and rebuked, and so on. And I made it to the steps. It was my little push against tyranny. And as I was walking away, I heard somebody beating on the glass of the Capitol door, the east side. And I said to the police officers, I said, Lieutenant Warren was there, who by this time, we've kind of gotten familiar with each other. I said to him, if you'll let me to the doors of the Capitol, if you'll let me go back, I'll try to stop somebody from breaking in. And so they did. They created a police line. And it was a narrow police line, I'm a big guy, but it was a narrow police line. And I had to sidestep my way through there. And as I was sidestepping my way through there, I'm brushing up against them, and they're brushing up against me. And I get to the doors of the Capitol, and I back in, and the Capitol doors are behind me. My back is up against them. And the person who's beating on the glass has a hoodie up, and he's looking into the glass of the Capitol door, and he's hitting on the glass. And as I backed into it, I said, "Come on, man, don't do that. We're not Antifa. We're not Black Lives Matter. We're not here to destroy property. This is our house. Let's don't do this." And he looked at me, and he just simply said to me, "And who are you?" And I said, "I'm a fellow patriot. Let's don't destroy property. Let's don't do this." And when he went to he raised his hand to hit the glass. And whenever he raised his hand to hit the glass, Capitol police officer sprayed me directly in the face with chemical agent. I mean, I could still see that big orange, yellowish stream coming right at my face. And it just covered my eyes, covered my face, covered my coat. And it hit me hard. I'm out. Thankfully, the folks that are there showed concern and empathy for me. They helped me get around the corner. They're dumping water in my eyes and so on and so forth. And 20 minutes later, when I finally get my eyes opened, the Capitol doors are open. And I'm standing right there. I've witnessed it.
Let me stop you for just a moment. Did you, just to clarify, so they sprayed you, but they didn't spray the man trying to get into the
Well,
Capitol?
I was looking outward. The man that was beating on the glass was looking inward. So he had a hoodie up over him, so he's completely covered. When we went to trial, we tried to make the defense the case. It says that if he was trying to break into the Capitol, why would he been looking out toward the plaza and got sprayed directly in the face? If his intentions was to go into the Capitol, he's looking the wrong direction. Well, that just falls on deaf ears. But nevertheless, when they finally get my eyes open, I get my bearings back about me, and the Capitol doors are open. And the people from the west side that was on the other side were coming through, and the people on the east side were going in. And the mantra as they were passing was this: go in, look around, get your pictures, don't harm or damage anything. This is our house, and come back out. And when they would walk in, they were shaking hands with Capitol police officers, fist bumping Capitol police officers, acknowledging and showing appreciation to Capitol police officers. And then the national anthem breaks out. One of the most amazing renditions of the national anthem that I've ever witnessed in my life. I'll never be able to hear the national anthem again like I did that day. And every time I hear it, I move to tears because I remember that day. The wind was blowing, the flags were stiff, and just patriots everywhere, just, singing the national anthem. But it's over with, and I stand there, and I look in the Capitol doors, and I see people moving and meandering around and everything else. And it's about 10 to 4. And I'm like, okay, I knew when I went there I would never go into the Capitol. The only way I would ever go into the Capitol if one of my legislators invited me in to address the legislation, the body. And obviously we didn't get access to them, so that never happened. So I just leave. And I'm at the Union Station ready to leave town by no later than 4:30. And so anyway, I begin to see what's happening, what's unfolding, and I'm like, oh, this ain't good. This isn't good. And this was Tuesday, and it was really Thursday before I realized the severity of what all really was going on.
So just for reference for our listeners and viewers, this didn't happen just in a 24-hour period. We're talking about from a Tuesday to a Thursday that you were experiencing all this, correct?
Yeah, well, the J6 was just Tuesday. I was there just one day. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. But whenever I came back home, I'm a business owner, so I go to work, and then Thursdays my church services. And so as I catch the news clips along the way, and like for instance, the shaman, it was Thursday before I seen the shaman, and I'm like, okay, so, but then when I began to realize and to hear the insurrection, I knew that this isn't going to be a good thing. And so anyway, I come home and I go about my business and so on and so forth. But realizing that they're rounding people up and making a big push, especially the guys and gals that were at the west, at the tunnel on the terrace there on the west side, that this isn't going to end well, because like I said, I was there for 4 hours,
You
and
knew there was something.
done
You knew
plenty of
something.
preaching. So what's that?
You knew it was unfolding. You saw what was unfolding in
Yeah, I
terms of
seen what was
rounding people
unfolding.
up. You
I
realized
seen
that
what
this
was
was an
unfolding.
intentional
Yeah.
operation.
Yes, exactly. And then and so by this time, myself and those that are with me and that traveled, it's like it's just a matter of time before they come. I'd done a Politico interview. I preached. I was at the steps of the Capitol. I was at the door of the Capitol. There was no incognito about me. That's just the way it was. And so, but anyway, time passes, and I get a voice message at church on my church phone, here it was in March of 2022, May of 2022. I'm sorry, and it was an FBI agent wanted to talk to me, and at my convenience, so I called him, and he said, "Mr. Dunfee." I said, "Yes." And he said that, I'd like to talk to you about January 6th. I'm sure you know why I'm calling you or why we're having this conversation. I said, yeah. And he said, I'd like to talk to you about January 6th. He said, your name is a reoccurring name. It keeps coming up. And said that we've looked at all the video. And we want you to know up front that you haven't done anything wrong. And that you were within your constitutional rights of what it is that you've done. But we was wondering if you'd be willing to come in and sit down and talk with us for the purpose of identifying some people that we have interest in. And I said to him, well, first of all, no, I will not talk to you without my attorney. I said that those days are gone. Obviously, under Christopher Wray's FBI, we just can't talk. If you want to talk to me, we'd have to have my attorney present. Okay. And then the second thing I would say is that the only people that I know are the people that were with me. And if I didn't do anything wrong, then they didn't do anything wrong, and I really have nothing to offer. But if you want to talk to me, I'll get with my attorney and we'll try to make this happen. And he said, no, it's all good. It's okay. We just thought maybe voluntarily you would come in and talk to us. I said, no, it's not going to happen. I said, okay, well, thank you. Have a great day. And so that was, I believe it was May when that happened, and in 2022. And things kind of go quiet. I don't hear anything, but I'm still following it. I'm following it religiously because there's a lot of lives that are being destroyed and ruined. And how far does this go? And then later in the fall, I start getting pop-ups on my phone. Bill, was this you? Is this you? Me at the Capitol, was this you? I didn't respond to any of them. LinkedIn
So
inquiries.
who were those from?
Who are they from? Just random people. I don't know who they're from.
Really?
They're just, by this time they have my contact information because of the seditious hunters and everything else. It's in the basement and rounding and doing facial recognition and everything else. And so anyway, and over time, there was even one of the attorneys of the Proud Boys. I can't think of his name right now. It'll come to me as soon as I get off of this interview. But one of the attorneys of the Proud Boys done a reconnaissance search on myself and the folks that were with me. I'm thinking that I was, alleging I was an informant. Absurdity. And put a motion into the court even that his defendant would be stayed. The trial would be stayed until they looked into this group of individuals, and myself being one of the lead of them. The Epoch Times wrote an article up on suspicious actors and so on. And so the whole January 6th thing, one of the things that I've learned is that if it was up to us in modern age to be able to establish a nation from nothing. I don't think we could pull it off because we wouldn't trust one another. You know what I mean? As soon as the heat got turned up and the guns got pointed toward us, we would start ratting or start trying to throw somebody else under the bus. And to me, that's tragic. It's real eye opener.
Very sad. Very sad.
It's a real eye opener how patriots just simply automatically just assume that another patriot is and in part I understand it, but it's sad. So anyway, they done this big hit piece on us, and so that really lit it up with seditious hunters and so on and so forth. It was October when I realized that it was coming for me, and this was October of in May of 2021. October of 2021, I realized they're all guns, it's really pointing toward me now. And then what happened next is that October the 5th of 2022, my wife and I was having our morning devotions. And we finished up our devotions. I just got off the phone with a young man in the church that had fallen off of a roof. He was a roofer, broke his hand, had prayer with him, and I got a phone call right after I hung up. No caller ID, and I've been getting them periodically for months. So I knew it was surveillance. I knew that it was the feds, just making sure that I still had the same phone number, and so on. And I answered it, and it said, William Dunfee? I said, yes. And 7:13 in the morning. William Dunfee? I said, yes. And said, this is the FBI. We are right outside your door in your driveway. We need you to exit your house with your hands in the air. You're under arrest. Walk straight toward us. God gave me a supernatural strength. I just got up, and with the resolve of the Holy Spirit, my wife is behind me. She has her hands on me. She's praying. She's interceding like the shield mate that she is, the intercessor she is. I get out the door. I don't have any shoes on. Thankfully, I go to work, so I was dressed, but I didn't have my shoes on. I had a T-shirt on. It's October. It's a cold, brisk morning. And I walk straight toward them. My wife stops at the door, falls on her knees, and is praying and praying and praying. And when I get to them, they put me in cuffs, put me in the car, and so we have a search warrant here for particular items in your home. And there were 7 FBI agents that came to take me. They had on their body armor. There was one positioned by every door in case I tried to escape, and then the other 5 were behind their car doors with their doors open and with their weapons on the front seat. And so they came and they put me in cuffs, put me in the car, and said, now here's a subpoena. They showed it to me, search warrant. This is what we need. We need your cell phone. We need your hat. We need your coat, and we need your bullhorn. I was really surprised they didn't ask for my Bible, but they didn't.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I told them, I said, well, I don't have a bullhorn. I didn't go with a bullhorn. I didn't think I needed a bullhorn. So I don't have a bullhorn. I don't even own a bullhorn. Believe it or not, I'm a street preacher that doesn't own a bullhorn. I just set up a mic, and so anyway, I said, but this is where you'll find the hat, the coat, the cell phone. And they said to me, the lieutenant, I'm assuming that would be his rank, the supervising agent, said to him, well, why don't you take us in and show us where it's at so we don't have to go through the house. And so I did. That was kind of them. I did. And they took the items and asked me for the passcode to my phone. And I looked at them and I don't have anything to hide. I don't have anything. Here's my passcode. I gave it to them. And so anyway, then they came back out, and I'm still in cuffs, and they put me in the car. By this time, my wife is down with them. My son, my daughter, and my son-in-law are with them, and they make it very clear. The supervising agent makes it very clear that I'm not to be detained. I'm to be released at the end of my processing, as I'm arraigned. So they're going to take me in. Said he should be home tonight. And, and said to my son and my son-in-law that you go to Marconi in Columbus at the federal courthouse and you'll be able to pick him up there. So they took me in, and whenever they were taking me, just down the road from me, I just built a house. just a quarter mile down the road. And when I get in the car and we're driving out of the driveway, the investigative agent said to me, he said, "So you got a 69 Chevelle in the garage, huh?" I said, looked at him and said, "Yeah, how do you know I have a 69 Chevelle?" He said, "It's our business to know everything." I said, "Okay." That means you was in my garage. That's what that means, is you was in my garage. And we drove by the house, and I said, "Oh, just small talk." I said, "Yeah, I built that house right there. It normally takes us about 4 months to build a house." And he said, "Yeah, we watched it being built." Yeah, yeah. And so then and there, I knew what had been going on. And so they surveilled me for a long time. I had
My
neighbors at the church come and
gracious.
call me. They call me out at church. I had one neighbor at the church call me out twice, and said to me, "Pastor," he said, "I want you to know you're being watched." I said, "No, I just brushed it off. I'm not being watched." He said, "No, you're being watched. The feds are watching you." "How do you know that?" "Because I see them around your building." Called me out another. This was on Thursday, and he says, "Yeah, I'm just telling you, you're being watched." I said, "Well, I didn't do anything. I don't have anything to hide, so let them watch, you know." But by this time, now that I've been arrested and processed, and I was held on a criminal complaint. I had not been indicted yet. It was a criminal complaint that they took me in custody with, and brought me home. But I knew then and there when I found out they finally indicted me, and with a criminal complaint that they gave me into court when I was being arraigned. I had 7 counts against me. I went in with 7 counts. They processed me, they fingerprinted me, they put me in a holding tank while I was waiting to be arraigned, and leg irons, belly chains, shackles. And when they took me into the courtroom to be arraigned, the investigating agent gave me my packet of my criminal complaint, and I'm looking at it, and I see 7 counts, and I asked him. I said, "What are these?" And he said, "The first 2 are felonies, and the last 5 are misdemeanors." I looked at him and I said, "Felonies? What in the world did I do January the 6th that merits a
Wow.
felony? I never
Wow.
laid hands on. What did I do? First Amendment activities. And I looked back at my son and my son-in-law, and I looked at them, and I'm like, holy mackerel! 2 felonies and 5 misdemeanors. And so whenever they finally got me a public defender, because my attorneys weren't able to be reached, and I hadn't hired a criminal attorney yet. I only have First Amendment attorneys, constitutional attorneys that are with me. They weren't able to be reached. But when they finally got me a public defender and they started going through it, the first offense, the first count was aiding and abetting civil disorder. That was a misdemeanor or a felony that came with a 10-year prison sentence, and I believe it was also a $200,000 fine. I'd have to go back and look at it. Initially, I thought it was $10,000, but later on I looked at it and it was higher. But anyway, it was come with a 10-year prison sentence maximum, and we'll just say a fine of $10,000 for the sake of. The second one was that big 1512, obstruction of official government business, the 1512 2C. That one was 20 years. And 20 years in prison. 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. And then I had misdemeanor of physical or assault. Physical contact with a Capitol police officer on property, on Capitol grounds, physical contact with a Capitol police officer in the Capitol building, and then I also had 2 of parading and trespassing. And I never had physical contact with a Capitol police officer. Here to come find out that when I brushed up against them when they were allowing me to the door, that was physical contact. One time I gave a fist bump to one of them. That was physical contact.
Wow.
That was the physical contact. And then I had the 2 trespassings, and I had a disorderly conduct. And so all in all, I was looking at 35 years in prison and about $300 and some $1,000 fine. And
Bill,
unbelievable.
let me ask you a question. These charges are obviously specious. All of them are specious. You know, what
Yeah.
do you think they were trying to do? They
Well,
were
I think
trying
it
to.
comes down to this, Brother Bill, is smite the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. That's what it comes down to. You know, they hit hard veterans, law enforcement officers. You know, those are the ones that they went after. If you was a veteran, bottom line is this, is that you're getting swatted. You know what I mean? They're showing up with the heavy artillery. If you're a police officer, you know, or if you were a civil servant, you're getting swatted. You know, I'm a pastor, and so it's a message. It's a whole different group of individuals, and so you smite the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. And that was the message: is we hit him hard enough, then there will not be another shepherd that will ever rise up to push back against the tyranny. You
Amen.
know, and so you know, and truthfully, the response that I got from many pastors and along the way, you know, will kind of verify, I guess, that their tactic accomplished what they wanted it to accomplish. Because you know, I received quite a bit of hate
Really?
emails and
Wow.
and voicemails and stuff like that. You know, so.
Amazing.
But after I was arrested and arraigned and you know, and charged with this, I'm waiting now on the indictment. But I discovered that they actually used my sermons. They actually used my sermons to build their case against me with the 1512, the obstruction of official government business. Because I said prior to going to D.C. that I'm going to go to the Stop the Steal rally, and this election isn't going to be stolen without our voices being heard. That you know, that I'm going to go. Who wants to go with me? That set it up that that his intentions were to go and to interfere with official government business. And then because I went and you know, I engaged January the 6th, and then on Memorial Day of 2021. There was a clip where I was wrapping up my sermon and talking to the congregation, and just in light of you know, liberty and freedom and so on and so forth. And I just simply said that I went to January the 6th. That you know, we went there that our voices would be heard. That patriots who went there to have their voices to be heard. And what did that get us? It got us labeled as terrorists, domestic terrorists. And I went on this little rant of what it got us. And so those were the bookends. My sermons from my pulpit was the bookends that they used to bring these charges against me. And so that was in October of 2022, and then finally I went to trial in January of 2024. So it was a long stretch of time.
Wow.
And all the while, you know, we're trying to move toward a jury trial, but I'm watching them unfold, and I'm like, and my attorneys are advising me. My attorneys are advising me that as it unfolds, as we get closer to the trial, and they're tracking the sentence guidelines and what's happening. They're advising me that, Bill, we got to reach a plea agreement of some sort. If we don't reach a plea agreement, you're going to prison for 18 years. Wow. I looked at him and I'm like, I'm going to prison for 18 years?
That's
Bill,
unbelievable.
I'm just telling you, when you do the points. Okay, you got 7 counts against you. When they finally indicted me, the disorderly conduct, so I ended up with 6. The disorderly conduct went away. When they finally indicted me, I had 6, and they said that when you do the point system, and they have that particular, you know, system in place, they said you're going to prison for 18 years. I'm 60 years old. All I done was went to January the 6th. And he said, well, I want you to think about it. And at this point, I'm adamant that we're going to trial. And then they begin to tell me what's going to cost to go to trial. I'm paying these guys, I'm paying out 2 attorneys $800 an hour is what's costing me to defend this thing. And they're like, you know, we'll take it to trial. But we want you to understand this. We want you to understand this. We will lose. It's rigged.
They were telling you you will lose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's rigged.
Unbelievable.
He said the jury pool is tainted. The judges are biased, and the prosecutors are getting everything that they want. We will lose, and you're going to prison for 18 years. Try sleeping on that.
No,
And some of them,
makes me want to cry.
some of the guys have
What
gotten
in the
18
world?
to 22 years. You know what I mean? And the thing of it is that whenever when we finally went to trial, we backed off. I backed off of a jury trial because two things. Number one, I realized that I was going to prison for a long time. And I said, well, let me at least take the stand and defend myself then. Will you let me do that. I'll bring in witnesses that can attest to the fact that I did not go there to obstruct. I didn't go there to try to stop the certification of election. I wanted it investigated, I got people to attest to the fact that there was no violence, there was no aggression, there was no, and the attorney said, you can bring in whoever you want. But every time that you every time that you take the stand and you testify on your behalf, that's called obstruction of administration of justice. And you're adding 2 points to your sentence guidelines.
Oh
So
my
every
goodness.
time that you testify or you bring somebody in to testify on your behalf, you're adding months to your prison sentence because they've already made up your mind you're guilty. And if you go on the witness stand and try to defend yourself, you're lying, you're obstructing the administration of justice, and you're going to get more prison time. So you're telling me I can't even defend myself.
Oh my
What we're telling
goodness.
you is yes, you can, but you need to understand if you don't tell the judge what he wants to hear, what they want to hear is that your points are going to add up, and you're going to get added time to your sentence.
Well, I have another question. Quick question. Did
Sure.
you have any conversations with the police officers you encountered down there that day after
Yeah.
the fact? They've talked to you.
Yeah. I had, you take it for 4 hours. They listened to me preach. For 4 hours, there was just simple, we back the blues and we apply, we encourage you, thank you and thank you and thank you. And then when things are beginning to erupt on the west side, and I'm waiting on Lieutenant Warren to get us to the steps on the east side, it's on video where I'm talking to Capitol police officers and telling them, listen, there's nothing to fear here. These are patriots. These are God-fearing individuals who all they want to do is have their voices to be heard. And then one of the Capitol in full riot gear says to me, we understand that, but do you see what's happening on the west side? I said, I'm not on the west side. I'm on the east side. And there's not a spirit of violence on the east side. Don't you see that? So anyway, yeah, we had the conversations, we had the fist bumps, we had all of that and everything else. And but again, you can't present it. You can't present it in trial only because of the fact that that it's obstruction of administration of justice.
I don't want to take away from what you're sharing. It's so important, I think. But I'm asking myself as I'm listening to you, are the people that perpetrated these are crimes that they perpetrated against you and others for the events of that day? Are these people still in our government? These tyrants?
Yes. Well, obviously, fortunately, Matthew
them?
Graves is gone, right? Matthew Graves, who was the lead district attorney there, the D.C. district attorney, who was the engine behind these prosecutions. Thankfully, he's gone, and so. But when we take a look at, for instance, the investigative agent, he's still in place, who knew good and well that he was lying.
What I want to know is you might not be able to answer this, but I want to know is what is being done to punish these people and make sure they don't do this again.
Well, the good news is right now that I'm a part of we'll call it a class action lawsuit. And, we have collectively, we have an aggressive legal team that is going after setting this thing straight. And I just got a questionnaire from them, and they asked me to identify who my judge was, who was the prosecuting attorney, who was the assistant AUSA attorney, who was the investigating agents who investigated me. And I know that the purpose for all that is for them to drill down on it and
Right.
Prayerfully remove these individuals from their
Right.
positions. So I think there's going to be the shame, the tragedy, Brother Bill, is this. I'm a pastor, okay? Before I ever got to the federal courthouse in Columbus, and it's a 65-mile trip. It's going to take an hour and 15 minutes to get there. It was on the news. Local pastor arrested for J6, for January 6th activities. And then
It's a
from there,
Marxist insurgency.
it skyrocketed and continued to balloon. Sedition, insurrectionist, J6 pastor, disgrace, and the whole. And not only did it in local news, that they were tipped that they were coming for me, and that the papers were printed. The media was running with it. And whenever I finally got out of the courthouse, and I hadn't eaten all day, you know what I mean? I finally got out. The kids and my son-in-law got me. We stopped at Wendy's to get me a cup of coffee, right? I'm a coffee drinker. And I didn't have an appetite. I couldn't eat anything, you know. You get 7 FBI agents that has a tendency to ruin your appetite. And so I'm standing there getting a cup of coffee, and the local news is running my picture, and local pastor arrested for, you know, and you know, and so then, and every time it was, you know, whenever they arrested me, it would go for about a week. Then whenever I was finally indicted, again, it picks up and runs again. And then when I went to trial, it was found guilty of. When we went to trial, we ended up entering into a stipulated plea agreement on the civil disorder and the trespassing. Well, we just it's a plea of no contest. We're not going to win. I'm not going to admit guilt because I didn't go there. But if I can do a stipulated bench trial, so be it. Let's move on with it. And then we done contested on the 1512. Which means I got to defend the fact that you know that basically it's a bench trial before Judge Reggie Walton. And so whenever it was all done and over with, the trial lasted maybe 3 hours, maybe 4 hours. My wife could tell you. He found me guilty on all counts, all 3 counts. We tried to put the trial off until after the Supreme Court ruled on the 1512. He made me defend it in the court. He made me defend it. And no sooner did I again, immediately the press runs with it that local pastor, you know, pastor in Ohio, and I just found guilty on, and then with the fines and the sentencing and Reggie Walton's remarks on scolding me and so on and so forth, and so then that was in January the 19th of 2024. I was arrested October the 5th, 2022. You see how long this takes, and
Wow.
yeah. Wow. And then which worked to my advantage because our prayers was President Trump would win. And I wouldn't have to spend the whole time in prison. One of the strategies, the only defense we had, was move this thing as far down the road as we can get and pray that he wins and that he stays true to his pardon. And so anyway, that was in January of 2024. I'm scheduled to be sentenced in March of 2024. And by God's grace, Judge Reggie Walton suspends the sentencing until June because of the no verdict on the 1512. And then June comes up, I'm due to be sentenced, and my attorneys are arguing that you can't sentence him with the 1512 still being decided in the Supreme Court. And so they held it off then until July. And so from January to July, I hadn't been sentenced yet. But by this time, we've gone from 18 years as through the process. I was looking at 18 years. If I do the stipulated and the stipulated and the contested on these here, I'd be looking at 10 years. I mean, and then and so then over a course of time, we get it down to the point. At one point, they had me. Well, you may be able to go home on house arrest. I'm like, from house arrest to 18 years. Try to figure all this out. But whenever we decided on doing these, and they began the pre-sentencing guideline stuff through the courts, that it became down to 18 to 24 months is what the pre-sentencing guidelines had for me with the courts. The prosecution wanted 4 years is what they wanted. And when we went to trial, now here's the amazing thing: when we went to sentencing, the sentencing was worse than the trial. At the trial,
Wow.
they were supposed to be limited to facts. They could only present facts. At the sentencing, all bars were off, all barriers were put down. Anything speculative, anything that just simply, whatever narrative they want to put out there, they can. And so at sentencing, they brought somebody in to testify against me. They didn't do it at trial. They done it at sentencing. So we went to sentencing, and they brought in a guy that was on the east side with me that I did not know, who took a plea deal early, who breached the barrier, and they brought him in to testify against me that I recruited him and 4 other people to breach the bicycle racks. Okay?
My goodness.
Yeah. This was to be sentenced. This wasn't in the trial. This was for sentencing. So Judge Reggie Walton's listening to this. I'm supposed to get 18 to 24. Prosecution wants 4 years. Now they got to convince the judge to give me 4 years. So now they'll just pull anything out of midair to make me sound like I'm the worst criminal that ever walked on God's green earth. And so they bring this guy in, and they have him testify that I had recruited him, and so on. And not only did I recruit him, but I recruited his friend and his son and another person. And so my attorneys get up and do the cross-examination and read a series of texts from his phone, that he came there to bust heads, that he came there to set the record straight, and they're not going to get away from this, burn the place down, and all this other type of stuff. And this was on the 5th of January. So anyway, my attorney said, have you ever met this Mr. Dunfee before? And just to shorten it, the man was totally discredited. The prosecution got up after my attorneys got done and said to the judge, Your Honor, we understand by name has been discredited, that we really can't take his testimony. Okay? But nevertheless, Mr. Dunfee was a hierarchical figure he was the tip of the spear. That it was a hierarchical order of things. He was at the top. There was another guy underneath of him. These 4 men was underneath of him, and then he led the charge. Without him, there would not have been an east side breach. Without him, the west side wouldn't have breached, because he was in cahoots with he was in contact with the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys.
Wow.
Never met them, never talked to them. I don't even know who they were other than through this. Okay, they did have where somebody wanted me to meet them. I walked up to them. They were busy. I was busy. I walked away. There's no evidence there was ever a meeting. But nevertheless, now I am coordinating the west side with the east side. Judge Reggie Walton said that you're right. This testimony is discredited. But this individual has attested to the fact that Mr. Dunfee recruited 4 other people, 2 of them whom he knows. And since we can't examine their testimony, we got to believe that he's true.
Oh my God.
In the cross-examination, they asked the guy that said that I recruited him, what was the tip? Well, he was supposed to, at the end of a prayer. Did you hear the prayer? No, he didn't pray. Well, I thought you said that the cue was prayer. Well, did he sing? No, there wasn't a sing. Did he walk up to you and say, do this? No. Then why would... So now here's the best part. Okay, I'm found guilty on this man's testimony. Now I have a leadership enhancement. That's 4 points. I just got my sentence enhanced on the testimony of an individual who'd been totally discredited. And Judge Reggie Walton granted it. Okay?
Wow.
That's it. So now I'm no longer even in the ballpark of 18 to 22 months. Now the prosecution got what they wanted to get me toward the 4 years, 48 months. Judge Reggie Walton gives me 30 months, won't let me self-surrender. takes me into custody immediately, and I begin. That's September the 19th of 2024. My wife is sitting no more than 10 feet behind me. I ask, can I give my wife a hug and kiss for the last time? Federal marshals walked up to me and said, you cannot. You are now in custody of the federal marshals. Empty your pockets and come with us. Okay. Now here's an amazing thing. Brother Bill, I don't even know if I told you guys this down in Knoxville. When they processed me and took me to the Gulag in D.C., there was 2 other J6s that was being processed at the same time. They were bringing us through. They said to the 2 that was co-defendants together, said, you two, the warden said, you two go this way and go down, and will follow me, and you're going to be in this cell. You, sir, you go down the bottom of the steps, turn left, and there'll be a cell door open. There's a nice old man in there that you can cell with. I went down, turned into the building. It's late at night, turned in. There's a guy in the cot in a fetal position sleeping. And I walked in, and immediately I recognized who it was. The door goes shut behind me. And I look at the individual, and I said, well, looky there. And he said to me, and just who the blah, blah are you? I said, you don't recognize me? So why would I recognize you? I said, you just testified against me.
Oh, my gracious, Bill.
I just got locked up. I just got put in a cell with the man that testified against me.
My gracious.
And I sit down at the end of the cot. And I look at him. He wakes up. And I look at him. And I said, I got a question for you. He said, what's that? I said, I don't ever remember meeting you or ever talking to you. He looked at me and he said, that's funny, because these other 2 individuals that he knows, his son and his friend, he said, whenever I mentioned this to them, they said the same thing, that they don't ever recall you ever talking to anybody, ever mentioning to anybody. Then he said, I wonder how I got that in my head. I'm like, well, I know how you got it in your head. Prosecutors putting it in your head. You know what I mean? Saying you want to do this, it's going to go easier for you. So anyway, I got a confession from him right then and there that, that no, you're right, I don't know you. And no, you've never talked to me. And therefore, so I, technically I assume that I could have went for a mistrial and moved on with it. But then I spent 6 days at the Gulag in D.C. and out for an hour and a half a day. And I'm unable to call my wife, to be in contact with my wife. I had the 15-minute phone call, that you get when you go in, that you're supposed to call your attorney. I've never been through the process, so I wasn't even smart enough to tell my wife how to reach me or where I was or anything. When I finally figured out the phone system, I said, honey, I'm okay. I'm all right. As soon as I figure something out, I'll let you know what's going on. I love you. I'll talk to you as soon as I can, and hung up.
Oh,
I'm like, if I had it to do, anybody that's ever in a position that I was put in, you need to understand the importance of that 15-minute phone call.
Wow.
And then from that point on, then I wasn't able to get on the phone to make contact with my wife. Fortunately, I had a couple of the J6 guys that done what was called a 3-way call, to where they would reach out to my wife, where I could talk to them for just, it's their minutes, so I can only use, get 15 minutes, so I can only use a few minutes. I spent 6 days in the Gulag in D.C. And
so what was that experience like? We've heard a lot about the Gulag. What was your experience like there?
Well, for me, it was different. For those of us who came in late, it was different, because you have the Gulag, that's the Patriot Pod. And where the Patriot Pod is that's where everybody is like us. You see what I'm saying? We're all patriots. We all have that common thread, J6. When I got there, they put us in general population.
Oh.
And so we're with the murderers, the rapists, the pedophiles, the career criminals, and everything else. So people say, and I, this is just my opinion. People say that, that's the most horrible thing, the Gulag and the Patriot Pod. I would have given anything to go to the Patriot Pod versus general population. Okay?
Wow.
When I got to D.C., I was put in general population there as well. And I had one of my inmates, his AK name was the Assassin.
Oh, and, my goodness.
He worked for the cartel and assassinated he assassinated 5 individuals point blank. And he's right there on the block with me. I have another young man who's a gangbanger, and he killed 4 people. I have multiple individuals that's been charged with homicides, carjackings, a few pedophiles here and there, career criminals, And one of the biggest things, though, was this, is they moved me to FDC Philly, and pretty much a maximum security detention center. So, you got the worst of the worst that are being detained there, and it's all intermingled together.
My goodness.
But at that place right there, that what it amounts to is this, is that it was a predominantly Muslim block, so controlled by the Muslims. It took me weeks to get my hands on a Bible, being a preacher. It took me weeks to get my hand on a Bible, finally did. But one of the things is this, is that everything is tribal in prison, especially in the detention centers. So they brought me from D.C., they bring people from Delaware, and then bring people from Philly, and bring them through there as a detention center. And so what happens is they identify you by the collar shoes that you wear. So I came in orange shoes, meaning I come from D.C. The Philly guys hate D.C. guys, especially the gangbangers. So when you're bringing gangbangers through from D.C. that are territorial in D.C., and you bring them into Philly with the Philly gangbangers that are territorial in D.C., then you're naturally going to have conflict on the block or in prison. And that's the objective. That's the goal, is to keep the conflict, to keep the hostility, to keep the drugs.
Wow. Did you ever feel like you were in danger during your incarceration?
Course, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. Without a doubt. The first 15 minutes that I was in D.C., I literally witnessed drugs being moved from my block. I was on the fourth floor, 4 North, cell number 413, and I witnessed drugs being moved from 413 to 713 through the toilet system. Okay, I witnessed drugs being moved from cell to cell as you're locked down, flying kites, the whole 9 yards. But one of the biggest things is laying in the cell at night, you would hear a scraping noise, a scratching noise, and it's a scratching of metal. And I'm like, what in the world is that noise? And then one of the guys that was next to the cell next to me, I said, what's that noise I'm hearing at night? And he said, that's somebody carving a shank. I said, what? Oh, carving a what? A shank. He said, yeah, they're when you're in prison, you either got to have a blade or you got to have a shank. And so they'll lay in their cell at night. They don't have one. And you can buy tweezers on commissary, and the steel of the tweezer is harder than the steel on the lockers or the cots or the toilets or whatever, the water fountains. And so they'll just lay there and just score and just scratch and score until they get to shank the blade that they want. And when I went into DC, or when I went into FDC Philly, the place was in lockdown, and it had just gone over the course of a 3-week period. It had gone through multiple, 2 major stabbings, and where it is that the people were locked down. And for me, I witnessed 3 stabbings while I was there.
Oh my goodness!
Exploited. I had a guy by the name of Shooter target me right away. Now, on the block, you can have 126 inmates. Okay, and out of that block, on that 126 inmates, that if you broke it down in ratios, that 70 to 75% would be black, and out of that it splits up tribal, Delaware, Philly, so on. Okay, DC. And then you have, at that point, you may have 15 to 20% that is Latino, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, so on. And then the remainder, 5%, may be white. So the most white guys that we got on the block while I was there was 7. And out of the 7, 2 of them were pedophiles. So you can only imagine what that done for the block. And so, but nevertheless, that's who you target because of white privilege. And me being a pastor, me being a J6er, which I had favor with a lot of the block because I was a J6, because they understood that it was rigged, it was set up, that, that you shouldn't even be in here. And I had multiple ones. But the head Muslims, the head orderly who controlled the block, he hated me with a passion. You're white privileged. I'm old enough, I should know better. I'm a preacher, you brainwashed and all this other stuff. But there was a young man that was on the block by the name of Shooter, and not for shooting basketball, because he was a shooter. And Shooter targeted me early, and I was sitting in my cell shortly after I got there, and he come walking in and said, "Bill, this is the way it's going to go." And I just looked at him and I said, "What's that?" He said, "I'm going to bring my commissary list down, and you're going to buy me commissary." I looked at him and said, "No, I'm not." He said, "No, you don't understand. You will." I said, "No, I won't. It will not happen. I will not be exploited." And so anyway, there was a little bit of a scene there, so on and so forth. He left. And commissary came, and he came down. I'd never ordered much commissary at all. I may do $50 worth of commissary. I figured that, if they wanted me, they incarcerated me, they're going to feed me, and they're going to keep me. I'm not spending my money. I'm not contributing back home, making money. I'm not spending my money to eat, commissary. But my wife would get me my coffee and make sure I had money for coffee and, for a little box of Cheez-Its so I could have some taste of civilization along the way. And he came in and he said, "Where is it?" And I said, "Listen, there's nothing here for you." And he was walking toward me, and I got up and walking toward him. But fortunately, on the back outside of my door, my cell door was open. That there was 3 other white guys that were stationed outside the door, car, what they call it, and they seen what was going on, and they walked in, and was able to defuse that, and then he went away. But a couple more attempts, and never got anywhere. The last attempt was that he went through one of the guys on the block that I had a good relationship with, and said that he called me off to the side. His name's Mike, and he said, "Bill," he said, "I've been asked to ask you this. They want $25. That's all he wants. And for $25, he'll lay out the red carpet. He'll back off of you for $25. I said, called the guy by name, Mike. I said, "Mike, it's not happening." I said, "I will not be exploited. You can steal from me if I'm not around, but you're not going to steal from me in my presence. You're not going to exploit me. It will not." He said, "Bill, they know you're a J6er. They know you're going to go home. They know that that you don't want to go. You don't want to go to the shoe." Okay. I said, "Mike, I'll do whatever I got to do. They're not exploiting me." "Are you serious?"
Wow.
I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Mike, here's the thing: is I'll give that man anything that he wants if he asks me for it personally. If he's hungry, I'll give him something to eat. If he's missing something that will keep him warm, I'll give him something warm. If he needs something sincerely, if he comes into my cell and asks me for it, I'll give it to him. But you're not going to steal it from me, and you're not going to exploit me." So I go to my cell. He comes walking in. And when he walks in, he sits down, and he said, "Bill," he said, this way it's going to go. $25. I'm going to lay out the red carpet, and you can get on the phone anytime you want. All you got to do is come and see me." I said, "Shooter, it's not happening." He said, "Bill, are you serious?" I said, "You're not going to exploit me, Shooter. It'll never happen. It's not happening." So do you not realize that I'm the leader of the Syrian Brotherhood in here?
Wow.
I didn't even know there was a Syrian Brotherhood. But it doesn't matter. It's not happening. And then my cellie walked in, and he looked at my cellie, and he said, "We're still good, right?" Meaning him, Shooter, and the cellie. And I looked at my cellie, and I'm like, "You entered into an agreement? You're letting this man exploit you?" And he looked at me, and he said, and he looked at Shooter, and he said, "No, I'm with Bill." And he said, "So you guys, are you serious?" I said, "Shooter, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep trusting God. I'm going to roll the dice and trust God. That's all I'm going to do. That's what I've done so far, and that's what I'm going to do now. So you're just going to trust God?" I said, "Yep, that's what I'm going to do." Let me end this story. At the end of it, we done at Thanksgiving. I got a hold of my church, and I wanted to do something that I've never been able to do, never even crossed my mind to do. we do a lot of compassion outreach in our community, disaster relief, take meals into disaster areas. And it was coming up on Thanksgiving, and I thought to myself, how neat would it be to have a Thanksgiving dinner provided for these folks inside here? And so we done what was called a commissary table Thanksgiving dinner, community dinner. I went to the church. I asked Connie, my wife, to ask the church. What I need is $450 or $500. I think it was $450, and that will be able to provide us with 4 tables of a commissary meal. And Connie went to the church. Just like that, we got to $450. Put it on my commissary, my Sally's commissary, 2 other commissaries. But in order to do it, I got to find guys that will cook the meals, because they won't eat a white man's cooking in prison. They just wouldn't eat it, especially a privileged white man like myself. So I go to each one of the different groups, the DC guys, the Philly guys, the Hispanics, the Latinos. And one of the guys that I go to cook one of the community dinners is Shooter. I said, Shooter, will you cook a meal for me? He looked at me and he said, are you serious? I said, yeah. I said, obviously, you got a group of people in here that you're a part of, and I need 4 guys that will cook meals, and I want to know, will you cook a meal for me? We'll provide it. You give me your commissary list of whatever it is that you want. Whatever you want off a commissary, we'll buy it, you cook it, and then Thanksgiving, we're opening it up to the whole block, and everybody can have a free meal on the church, New Beginnings Ministries. Are you serious? So, yeah. So we got the 4 guys to cook it, and we weren't able to do it on Thanksgiving because we were afraid that we'd be locked down, and the Muslims were kicking against it. So we done it on Wednesday. They all put the meal together. Shooter cooked the meal. Everybody came together, had fellowship together.
My goodness, brother.
We shared the meal together. And I can tell you from that day forward, this was just prior to Thanksgiving. Okay? Just prior to Thanksgiving. And I can tell you that from that day forward, everything changed for me and between me and Shooter. Shooter became my friend.
Goodness.
He would walk into my cell. He would stand at the little window of my cell. My door was shut, and he would look at me, and I said, come on in. And he called me by name. And actually, he didn't call me by name. He called me, and my name's Bill. In there, they only knew me as William. Only a few knew me as Bill. But he called me, he referred to me as Billy. He would say, hey, Billy, you got any sugar? You got any sweet and low? You got any pink packets? Can I get a pink packet off of you? Can I get a shot of coffee off of you? Yours. Yeah, Shooter, here you go. And from that day forward, barriers came down. Things got quite a bit better. I still had issues with the head orderly and some of the Muslims that were close to that. But out of that, we started the Bible study. We started the Bible study early. 3 people gave their lives to Jesus Christ. We was able to do Bible studies nightly together when we weren't locked down. And right before I was to get out on a commutation, I thought, my Sally came to me, and with tears in his eyes, he was crying, and he said, I need to apologize to you. I said, what do you need to apologize to me for? He said, you're here because of me. I looked at him just like this with a chuckle. I said, how in the world am I here because of you? I never even met you before. He said, you're here because of me, because I would have never given my life to Jesus had I not met you in prison. So you're here because of me. And I said, well, if that's the case, I'll come here over and over again if that's the end result. And so 3 individuals did get saved. I'm still in contact with some of them that are in prison. Many more things happened, but the weekend that we would have been commuted, I use the word commuted because I thought I was going to be commuted, not pardoned. We were in lockdown. We went in lockdown on Saturday by 8 a.m. we were in lockdown. And the reason being is that the drugs on the floor, one of the guys on our block came out of his cell stoned on Deuce K2, charged the bubble, attacked the correctional officer. On the 5th floor, there was a major stabbing. On the third floor, there was an indecent exposure, and so they locked the whole jail down. And so from Saturday on the week of Martin Luther King weekend, we were locked down from the 8 a.m. Up until the doors opened at 12:15 a.m. January the 21st for me to get out. And now, here's the thing: is I was only. How long do I have? Is this supposed to end sometime soon? Or?
It's okay. You know what? The story is so compelling. We usually go an hour, but your story is so compelling. But this might be a really good time. I'd like to take this time to really thank our sponsor, Cardi Miracle and John Hewlett. I can't wait for him to watch this podcast, the Paul Speak podcast that we have every single week. But he is truly one of the greatest patriots behind kingdom business that I have ever met. And Bill knows him very well. He's changing lives on the outside. He's changing lives on the inside. He had an encounter in his own life when he almost lost his life because of a medical situation. And he went on to do homework, and he went on to do studies and created this wonderful product called Cardio Miracle that literally is changing people's lives every single day. And Bill can contest to that as well as myself. Yep. But to have someone that sponsors podcasts such as this is critically important so we get the truth out. And also, he backs the patriots. He backs those that are out there fighting for their lives and fighting for our freedoms. His biggest goal in life is to heal the hearts of mankind.
Amen.
So
Amen.
Truly, what a blessing it is to talk about Cardio Miracle. And Bill, maybe you can just share a little bit about, since you've been taking the product, how it literally changed your life.
John has been very generous to my efforts with the Black Robe Regiment. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. He has supported me financially, but also in a significant way. But also, I started using the Cardio Miracle product on a regular basis, and I went for a physical about a year ago, several months ago, and my doctor said, "You've got the blood pressure of a teenager." And I'm 70 years old, and I was kind of surprised to hear it, but I was glad to hear it, but I was surprised to hear it. It really had affected my health in that way. So anyway.
So it's helping many people's lives. We can't wait to get you some, Bill. We know that what stress does in the body over a period of time, even though you have the Lord by your side and these amazing testimonials that you're giving us, I think that people are going to be wanting to hear more from you. And know maybe possibly where they can contact you and how they can continue to bless you. And, it was funny. I was invited to be there at the Capitol that day. And a dear pastor friend of mine, Rodney Howard Brown, called me and said, "Lisa, I feel in the spirit you're not supposed to go." And I said, "Really?" He said, "No, you're not supposed to go. You're supposed to stay right where you are and pray." And so, number one, thank you for what you did. Thank you for everything you've been through. Thank you for standing on your principles of our fathers, and that, God used you right where you were at. And I, as a daughter, a PK kid, but also, the chief of police out of Detroit, Michigan, I can't imagine what you went through on that side of the fence. So we'll continue to pray for you, brother, and just thank you so much for sharing your story. And we're going to just close it down with, what happened after?
After getting out?
Yes. Now, exactly how long were you in there?
I was in 4 months and 1 day.
Wow.
4 months and 1 day. I was only supposed to be at D.C. for 2 weeks, and I was only supposed to be at Philly for 2 weeks before I was transferred to a compound. And I was there for the duration. But when we were locked down on that weekend prior to my pardon, which I thought was a commutation, they had a trick up their sleeve, the Bureau of Prisons. They came to my cell Sunday morning. They come to my cell Sunday morning and opened up my cell door, hollered, "Dunfee, get your stuff together. We're packing you out." And I thought that meant that they were packing me out to send me home. I looked at my cellie and I was excited and everything else. And said, "Get your stuff ready. We'll be back to get you." And I'm like, "Whoo, I'm out of here. I'm going home." But then they went down another cell and another cell and another cell. I'm like, wait, I'm the only J6er on this block. There's something else going on here. So finally they came back around lunchtime, about around 12. And opened up, and I brought my stuff out, and I asked the correctional officer. I said, "Can you tell me where I'm going?" She said, "No, but if you guess, I may be able to give you, kind of a tip that, well, am I going home?" And she said, "No, honey, you ain't going home. That's not on this list." Well, I said, I'm going to get commutation. And she said, "Well, if you get a commutation, we won't put you on a bus, but you ain't going home." I said, "Well, my wife and my family are on their way down here now to pick me up because I'm getting out of here." And she said, "No, you're leaving Tuesday morning. You're transferring out of here." "Well, where am I going?" And she didn't say. I said, "Well, am I going to Elkton?" She said, "No, you're not going to Elkton." All right, well, I don't know. Now my heart sinks. I mean, I'm just like, my heart sinks. So I go back, I give them everything, we put it in the box, I go back to my cell. Now I don't have anything, and this is Sunday around noon. So I don't have my books, I don't have anything to read, I don't have anything. It's all packed out, and I'm still locked down. And when the CEO comes around to give us our breakfast, I ask, "How long are we going to be locked down?" And she said to me, "What we're hearing is that you're going to be locked down till Tuesday morning." This was Saturday morning, you're going to be locked down till Tuesday morning. I'm like, "Tuesday morning? My family was waiting to hear from me so that we can." I said, "No, you're locked down till Tuesday morning." So Sunday, it was a long Sunday. It goes. We get into Monday morning, which is inauguration morning. And they open my cell. They open your cell at 6:30, about 6:45. They bring the tray through for your breakfast and close my cell up. And I'm watching the inauguration on a Hispanic TV that's about 60 yards, probably 40 yards away from me. No volume, but I'm watching it. For 12 hours, I stand there because my wife told me that President Trump was going to sign the commutation executive orders on Inauguration Day, and we were going to be the fourth one. So I'm watching, waiting for him to sign it. Long story short, finally, a little after 5, I see where he signs it, and I think that that's it. I'm getting out of here. I'm going home. He signed it. Even if they put me on a bus and transfer me out of here, it may take them 2 weeks to find me, but I'm still going home, right? And so about 9 o'clock that night, I tell my cellie, I said, I'm turning in early tonight. And the way it works is that they come around, they call for count at 10 o'clock, somewhere between 10:30 and 11 o'clock, they'll come through. When they come through, you got to be on your lights on your feet where they can count you. And I said, if they make me, if they want me to get up, then I'll get up, but I'm going to sleep. And so I got ready to go to sleep that night. It was around 9. I had butterflies. I had anxieties. And I said, "Lord, you got to help me sleep. I got to sleep because I'm going to be transferred out of here in the morning, and my wife ain't going to be able to find me if I get out. You got to help me sleep." And then the scripture came to my mind, Daniel in the lion's den.
Mm-hmm. I've been thinking about that the whole time. The
scripture said, "And God shut the mouth of the lion, and Daniel slept." I went to sleep that night, and I slept like a baby. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, everything's loud in prison. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, cell door swings open, slams open, light flips on, top of their lungs, "Dunfee, get your stuff, you're leaving." And I'm startled awake, right? And I'm arguing with the CEOs. "No, I can't leave. My wife's here to get me. I'm going to have a commutation." They looked, "Dunfee, get your stuff, you're leaving." I'm like, "No, you don't understand. I'm going to get a commutation. My family's coming to get me." And now they're getting angry. "Dunfee, get your stuff, you're leaving." And I looked at my cellie because I didn't have anything. I said to myself, "What time is it?" And he says, "It's 12:15. I looked at them and I said, "You mean I'm leaving? It's 12:15 a.m. You mean yes, you're leaving. Your family's in the parking lot waiting for you. The rest of you are down in the tank being processed. You're the last one. Nobody can leave till you get down there. Get your stuff. You're leaving."
Wow, praise God.
I'm like, I done a happy dance. I gave my cellie a hug and had a quick prayer over him. And when I was walking and being ushered out, I asked him, I said, "Is it a commutation?" And they said to me, "What we're hearing is you got a pardon." I said, "No way, a pardon?" "That's what we're hearing." So this was 12:15. It took them a while to process. It turned out there was 13 of us there. And all that time, I spent 3 months all by myself as the only J6 on the block in general population. And finally, at about 2:30, they let us out all at once. It was cold, it was dark, it was snowy, it was wintry. We left that building. We walked out of that building, all of us in single file. I seen a truck to my left-hand side that had an American flag and "Don't Tread on Me" flag sitting in the parking lot, and I knew I was in the right place. And I'm looking for my family because they came by faith to get me. And finally, I see my son right across from me in his car. His eyes fix my eyes. We fix eyes on each other. And he comes over. And I'm loaded with books and everything else because of the kindness of people while I was in prison. And we hug and we're crying. And now my family's coming. And finally, I get to see my wife for the first time. And we've been married for 42 years.
Aww.
For the first time in 4 months and 1 day. And we're reunited, and we're thanking God for every day of our lives.
Praise God.
And President Trump for the full and unconditional pardon. So, and there's so much more in between.
Oh, there's so much. We have to have you back, Pastor. I was there at the inauguration, the night that it was announced that you would all be leaving. I know there's a lot of my friends that were, the patriots, and also the media was making their way there, but it was such a cold night. And we had just gone from ball to ball, and it was so freezing cold. I wanted to go and see you guys come out. But to hear your story and hear your strength from our Father, and I believe the strength that you're going to be able to give other people through your story, what a beautiful, beautiful testimonial. And I'm so sorry for everything that you went through. I can't even comprehend it nor imagine it. And I thank you, Pastor Bill, for putting this together. What a riveting
My
podcast.
joy.
I can't wait for everybody to hear about it. And as you were talking, I was sitting here thinking to myself, wouldn't it be awesome, Pastor Bill Cook, if we could start getting Cardio Miracle to those men and women in prison? To have a nutritional form that could actually cross the blood-brain barrier and help them with their good cognitive thought, and for them to be able to carry their strength and
That'd
have
be great.
strength to make it through. So, God has placed you in the right place, and bless you, brother. And thank you both for such an amazing podcast, and I look forward to more.
I think one of the things that I've seen as I was listening to Bill tell his story again, this is the second time I've heard it. It's clear to me that the enemy that we have, our arch enemy, Satan, is playing for keeps.
Yes.
This isn't a dry run for him.
That's right.
He's playing for keeps.
Amen.
That's
Amen.
right.
And we need to pray. We need to play for keeps. So
Yes.
Amen.
I'm excited to have you as a member of the Black Robe Regiment, Bill.
I'm excited to be. Hallelujah. I'm thankful for the people that God has brought into my life.
Praise God.
Yes.
An opportunity to meet each and every one of you. And Lisa, it's so good to meet you. Thank you for your kind words and your encouragement and your smile.
Oh.
It does my heart good when I get to share, and people are able to sift through all the lies and to really just simply hang on to what is true. And it makes a difference. When the truth is told, it makes a difference.
It really is. The truth sets men free.
And I'm so thankful that we have folks in the administration that are turning over every rock.
That's
to
right.
get to the truth.
They
And
really
there's going to be justice.
Let them
There's
keep
going to be
turning rocks,
justice.
Lord.
Yes.
Amen. Amen. I appreciate you
bless
both
you
so
both.
much.
Appreciate you, Bill.
I look forward to next time.